So we have become experts in our lives in different contexts, academic, professional, and personally. Where we often struggle is in our cognitive development of moral understanding. Moral understanding is a take it or leave it application of knowledge. It is optional. So, some people really shy away from being moral. They understand that there is a such thing as ethics and morality, but they have gotten to a point where they are, becoming desensitized to what is moral, what is ethical, because basically they want to do whatever they want to do. And they need somebody to co-sign. And so as long as they don't have someone challenging them, then they feel validated in their decision to be unethical or to be immoral. Kohlberg's theory of moral development focuses on cognitive development of how we navigate moral dilemmas, which is a conflict between two moral values. Kohlberg emphasized that it is the way an individual reasons about the dilemma, not the content of the response, whether or not to steal, that determines moral maturity. Kohlberg frames his discussion into states of moral understanding, and we're going to get into that. Pay attention to that it is not is the way the individual reasons about the dilemma. So that tells you that there is a reasoning process, that you don't just pick up a gun and shoot somebody in the heat of passion. I know that we have that as a legal sort of dictate in the laws, that somebody, did something in the heat of passion. No, you have to think about that for a while before you actually put it into action. You've already visualized the apartment, the ins and outs, the person's schedule, the person that you're going to shoot, the person's schedule, the person who you're going to shoot, right? What they are like in terms of their attitudes, in terms of what moves them, in terms of when they get angry. And then you think about yourself. You think about how you've been harmed. You think about your schedule. If shooting them is on schedule for them, for you, you think about the clothes you're going to wear. You pull out the shoes. You pull out the, dark outfit. You do so much in terms of planning in your head alone. Even if you don't take your hands and plan anything out, in a physical sense, in your mind, you have already played it out. So then you are reasoning about the moral dilemma. You are saying to yourself whether or not this is a good thing for you to do. And it's not the content of the response. It's not the actual you shooting the person that is the issue. It's the reasoning towards it that takes a lot longer of a process that is the actual issue. There are 3 levels with 2 stages under each. So there is, and that's 3 levels of moral understanding. So there is the preconventional level. Under this level, children will accept the rules of authority figures and judge actions by consequences. So stage 1, punishment and obedience orientation. Children behave morally out of fear of authority and avoidance of punishment. They find it difficult to consider 2 points of view. So, I was always afraid if my mother said she was going to spank me about something, if I didn't do it, I made sure to do it. I didn't have to move to many stages, in order to understand that. Stage 2, instrumental purpose orientation. So children are introduced to 2 different points of view or perspectives of a moral dilemma, that they view the dilemma from a stance of reciprocity. You do this for me, and I will do that for you. And, we didn't have reciprocity in the home. If we were assigned to do a particular chore, and I was the oldest in my family, so I did all of the dishes. I swept all the floors, scrubbed the walls, things like that. When my brothers got older, a little older, and they were in, I guess, 5th or 6th grade, they became responsible for maybe taking out the trash, making the beds, things like that. We never between us said, well, if you do this for me, I will do that for you. We knew that if we didn't do that particular chore, our mother would know it, and there will be consequences. Now, there was a time when one of my brothers, he didn't like doing the chores. So, or he procrastinated and waited all the way to the time my mother would come home from work, right, to wash the dishes or take out the trash. And so my mother would yell, and instead of saying to him that he still needed to do it, she would look at me and say, why I didn't do it, you know? And she made this comment. I said in response that it was his job to do. It was something that you gave him to do. And you know, as a child, you're not supposed to talk back to your parents or whatever. But I was saying something just explicit. You told him to take out the trash. But she returned, why didn't you do it? I mean, you do it and you get the reward. Now, I never got the reward, but she made a point of sort of making me responsible for the thing that he was supposed to do. He was assigned to do. And so if you sort of perfect that strategy, you know, later I became a person who was responsible for doing things that other people were supposed to do, and that arose out of like people pleasing. And so I had to begin addressing that before I could go on to other greater battles, because today I'm not a people pleaser. No way, no how. I stopped that somewhere in college all the way up till about 32 years old. And I began to work through using no. But that is important to understand that just at these, you know, children, adolescent, early adulthood stages, what you do now, what you do then does have an impact on how you will navigate your life as an adult. All right, conventional level. So children regard conformity to social rules, but believe that maintaining the social system as advantageous to maintaining positive relationships and societal order. So stage 3, good boy, good girl orientation, morality of interpersonal cooperation. Maintaining close personal ties is the motivation for sustaining affection and approval of friends and relatives. It is about being a good person who is trustworthy, loyal, respectful, and helpful. Reciprocity is still activated at this stage, but not because of self-interest. It is mainly activated out of a concern for the welfare of others. Now, that same brother was a type of brother who may not have been consistent with, say, taking out the trash under my mother's instruction or direction, but he was more consistent with being concerned about the welfare of a friend. So he was the one that if his friend was being bullied or something like that, he would take up for his friend. Now, he wasn't instructed to do so, and it's almost like substitution, that you won't adhere to one instruction over here on this path, but you will create an instruction by default for standing up for somebody else, right? In some ways that's good, some ways that is bad, because if you ignore instruction in other areas, if you don't adhere to that instruction, you will have problems in other areas. Because if you have the record of actually completing something, completing the instruction in this one area right here, it may have an impact in another area. I'm not saying that taking out the trash will have an impact with standing up for a bully, but you might think twice about it. I know that's far-fetched, but you might think about it a lot longer, especially if your friend doesn't appreciate you taking care of him. In all generality, being concerned for the welfare of others is not a bad thing. You want to be what we call in our society, quote unquote, a good boy or a good girl, right? Your parents will, pat you on the back, pat you on the shoulders. You are a good boy, or a good girl. But it does have its, disadvantages, right? Because if you are too concerned about the welfare of others, you are not concerned about the welfare of the thing that you need to do. That's why it's not that far-fetched that there may be a link or a connection between not adhering to the instruction to take out the trash and creating an instruction to be concerned about the welfare of others, because you are not concerned about your welfare. You are more concerned about the other person's welfare, but not you. You are the one who's going to get the spanking if you don't take out the trash. Right? Stage 4, social order, maintaining orientation. So laws should never be disobeyed at this stage because they are needed to uphold society. Rules must be enforced, and moral choices no longer depend on personal ties. Everyone is duty bound. So as you sort of progress as a child into your adolescent stages, you've already had multiple chances to like obey laws, right? At least obey rules in the house, right? And if you sort of, buck at those rules and say you're going to do whatever you want to do, then outside of the home is where there will be higher consequences, because you may be able to talk crazy to your mother or to your father, but you can't talk crazy to an authority figure at your job and still keep your job. If your mother says that you have to be back in by this curfew, right? And you're learning how to manage time in one area of your life, then if you arrive late to your job, you have a struggle with managing time, or you leave your job too early, right? Your struggle is with the rule about how to manage time. You will lose your job. You can't talk to the police officer any kind of way. Whatever you did in your house, you can't get away with the police officer, because the police officer in that moment is in charge by law. If they pull you over, they have a strict police procedure that they adhere to. You may not know what it is, but your job is just to obey the law. So once you leave the house and you get into, society and the social ordering of society, you are responsible for, supporting the rules, whether you like them or not, and you are duty bound to obey them. You cannot be mad if you jaywalk and the officer gives you a ticket. What are you giving me a ticket for? That's not right. You're just against me. No, you jaywalked. That is the law on the books. So once you get to stage 4, there are no extra considerations for you that you don't understand things, because you've had so much practice from the time you were in first grade about, getting in line, standing in line, putting the toys back into the bin, eating your lunch, sitting on the little carpet, having nap time, having music time. You have had so much exposure to rule making and the enforcing of rules that you should not be surprised by the time you leave the house every day, whether you are an adolescent to high school or when you finally leave the home itself. Postconventional or principled level, so individuals defined morality in terms of abstract principles and values that apply to every situation and the society at large. So stage 5, social contract orientation. This is defined as a free and willing participation in the system. Individuals regard laws and rules as flexible instruments to further human purpose, but they also imagine alternatives to their personal social order and emphasize fair procedures for interpretation and application of the law. So it's like you are now in the process of creating your own social contract with society. Maybe the current trend is to, get a good job or get a good man, or you go to the military. But once you leave and, graduate high school, you have the rights and privileges and freedom to pursue your course of action. I'm not saying go into illegal activities, but you have options. I try to get my students to understand that when they are going to junior college, it's not just about you getting or completing all of your general education coursework. That your 2 years here at junior college, community college, is planning. These are 2 years of planning so that you have options. It's nothing worse than to sit there and take classes, complete tests, and then you graduate and you don't know where to take yourself. You haven't planned anything out. You haven't planned your transition. And I have been a very culprit in this. I am so guilty of this, that even though I could plan in other areas of my life, like I planned from the time that I was going to leave from Dallas to San Diego, right? And but I didn't necessarily plan the job. Now, I was able to stay in San Diego for 10 years. And I got there at the right time where my rent, I was leaving rent from here at $375. When I moved to San Diego, the rent was just $445. I had a little bit of money saved, right? And then I was able to get a job on a election campaign, and then within 3 weeks of me being in San Diego, I was able to get a full-time job. I think back, and I think back to that time. I wish I would have planned a little bit more. I couldn't do that today. I don't think you can really move anywhere anymore today in the same way that I did when I moved everything on Greyhound. But had I planned out of high school, those 2 years, junior and senior year out of high school, I would have had options once I graduated. I wouldn't have had to make a bad decision and move in with some guy. And then it didn't work out. And then I ended up having to move out because he was, special. And I would have had the option of maybe having a better job, or I would have had the option, I would have planned to transition to community college or to university, but I didn't do that. All I wanted was my paper. And so I focused on one thing. I was trying to get into the military, and I couldn't get in. I did the test. I passed the test well, but I have like a knee problem and an inner ear problem. And so I didn't have any other plans after that. And so when you don't have a plan, it's good that you are free and a willing participant in the social system, but the social system is organized. It is structured. And so now, where are you actually going to place yourself? And so for life, for you at 18 years old, it will always be entry level. You know, anything you get into will be entry level, whether you go through the, you know, community college or university system or a job. So it's important to plan. That's why now I have like a 7-year plan. In 2020, it's going to be a 10-year plan. Then I have individual 2-year plans, because I really push planning for a transition. So stage 6 is universal ethical principle orientation. So right action is defined as self-chosen ethical principles of conscience, regardless of law and social agreement. The worth and dignity of a person must be respected. So if you find yourself shooting somebody, or, you know, kicking somebody's butt, you know, cussing somebody out, anything, you are basically suggesting that I'm just going to ignore all of that exposure to how to treat people from the time I was in, you know, first grade. I would go so far as, you know, kindergarten to 18 years old to 12th grade. I'm just going to ignore all of that. None of that really had any sort of impact on me. And so now I'm just going to pick up this gun and shoot somebody. I don't have any respect for anybody other than myself. And so that takes a long time to cultivate. I don't think you graduate with that understanding just at 18 years old. I think you didn't have respect for somebody way before that. If you remember in the previous audios, I was saying that the you know, relational aggression that people may use is often reflected in this statement, you know, because I said so. You know, do it because I said so, right? So I don't know if it's always just exposure to a parent that is permissive in how they allow you to do certain things, but you have your own conscience as well. You can think on your own by a certain age, and you know right from wrong. And so that lack of respect for a person or for a life or whatever, that begins much earlier in your lifespan. Because moral development is a slow and gradual process, it requires cognitive self-regulation, which is defined as the process of continuously monitoring progress toward a goal, checking outcomes, and redirecting unsuccessful efforts. So emotional regulation might be you controlling your mood. You may check your temperament right. You no longer pout and, you know, fall out on the floor. By a certain age, you should not be, you know, falling out on the floor and crying and pouting and yelling and things like that. Cognitive self-regulation is you being cognitively aware of yourself, aware of the types of goals you set, aware of the types of outcomes you expect, and aware of the fact that some efforts will be unsuccessful, but that does not necessarily mean that you cannot reach completion in other areas. So maybe in this regard, cognitive self-regulation might be the goal would be, I'm not going to cheat on my wife. I'm not going to cheat on my husband. I'm not going to be a cheater, right? And then, of course, as soon as you make that kind of statement, here come the distractions, here come the, you know, temptations or whatever. If you pass by not actually sleeping with someone other than your wife or other than your husband, you look at the outcome of that outcome is successful, right? But you could still be tempted, even though that's a good solid goal, you can still be tempted unexpectedly. I don't believe that, because we all get ourselves into stuff. But say, you know, for instance, you were drinking too much and you were among friends and somehow you slipped up and, you know, got into bed with another friend, right? And you woke up and you felt guilty. Well, that's an unsuccessful effort. It was you sort of hindering yourself by drinking, right? Hindering the goal towards completion by drinking, and you should know whether or not you can hold your liquor, right? You should know by now as an adult whether or not you can like contain yourself. If you are in front of a beautiful woman or good looking man, you should know by now if you are likely to jump into bed with somebody. If you stick around, that means you want to. So then you have to go back and check your goals. So then, is that a realistic goal for you, that you're not going to cheat? That's something that you have to look at for yourself. Any other types of goals could be, I need to finish my 2 years here at the university. At the community college, right? And then you check that outcome. The outcome would be you establishing a record of completion of courses. And then if you end up failing a course, that unsuccessful effort, okay, then you take it again, right? Especially if it is a core course, right? You take it again and pass it, and then you are now able to accomplish your goal. The most important aspect of cognitive self-regulation is that you are aware. You are not asleep. For a long time, I was emotionally asleep because of some pain in my past that I never resolved. And so then I emotionally got into relationships where I was rejected, where I was treated badly, because I was emotionally asleep. And it wasn't until the last relationship where I woke up, where it was a brick wall. The person was a snake. And I didn't realize how close I came to danger, to the point that I might not be here. And so that woke me up. This is usually done in middle childhood, where school-age children learn about culture, schooling, memory strategies, information processing, and the theory of the mind. Children are often assessed on their ability to remember to apply memory strategies gradually, using their knowledge of strategies to improve recall. They are encouraged to self-regulate, which is linked to self-efficacy or confidence in one's own abilities. So if we are self-processing, information processing in terms of learning, grade school concepts, okay, that's different. You need to advance and learn and understand. Okay, remember, apply, improve recall, for tests and things like that. What I want to focus on then is something, kind of different from that the teacher tells you, or the authority figure tells you, let everyone have their chance at playing with the ball. Okay? That's a very clear instruction, because everyone needs to be able to participate. However, you decide as an individual, as a school-age child, you are not going to obey that instruction. I want to hold the ball. I'm the only one who can hold the ball. And if you want the ball, you're going to have to ask me to hold the ball. But even then, I'm not going to let you hold the ball. Right? So then that part of the life strategy, how to work with other people, is not progressed or moved forward. It's not learned, because then you will see that person in their adolescent, their teenage years, their early adulthood, moving that failure at information processing to other areas of their life. So the ball could turn into holding a woman or holding a man. I'm not going to give you back your man. I'm not going to give you back your woman. The ball could be something that they stole, right? Like you have people who have white-collar criminals who have gone down for stealing pensions and thrift savings plans and things like that. Well, it began with the ball. That there was a strategy in information processing, a strategy that they did not complete, that they did not, succeed at. And so they might have learned all of their studies information, but they did not learn how to work well and respect others. And so they took that strategy of not working well with others to their later lifespan years. So now they will regulate when it comes to learning materials, learning concepts, but they always have to hit somebody at the bar. I mean, here it is, you work 40 hours a week, and then you go to the bar on Friday, happy hour, or on Saturday, and you can't manage yourself at the bar. You always got to take your fist and hit somebody, right? It's a number of examples you could think of where people, say for instance, they know how to manage themselves all throughout the week, but then they got to go to a club and get drunk. I mean, every time you turn around, they just have to be drunk. They just have to be high. They can keep up with their lives where it requires content development and content understanding and content application, but they cannot manage themselves when it comes to cheating. They can't manage themselves when it comes to, physical violence. They can't manage themselves when it comes to stealing and thievery. So that's kind of interesting to think about it like that. But it's all the respect game. Who you respect. It is at the point of self-regulation where people as children and then later as adults often struggle with problem solving because they take a passive orientation towards setting goals and accomplishing tasks. They have problems with organizing information, organizing the learning environment, and developing a purposeful approach. This lack of self-regulation, whether emotional or cognitive, is exhibited in adulthood when not corrected or resolved. Lack of self-regulation affects multiple contexts and situations, including romantic relationships. It affects self-esteem and the road to self-efficacy. It contributes to procrastination and the byproduct of learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is just this sort of thinking that you have that you can't learn anything, and that like learning for you is is not hopeful. It's not a thing that you can sort of attain. And when we sort of express learned helplessness in one area, we will see it in other areas as well.